I have the Colecovision here and I'm ready to take it apart. It's not very difficult to take one of these apart if you know how to do it. Now, just so you're aware, the strip here along the front has 3 self-tapper screws that essentially hold this whole front panel facade and basically acts as an interlock between the 2 halves of the case itself. You can see here how it kind of overlaps between these 2 pieces. So if you were to try to do this the proper way, you would actually have to remove this foil sticker along the front, which would be kind of difficult, and it might not look so pretty afterwards because the screws are hidden underneath this. Instead, I'll show you another method that is most commonly done by most of us. It might seem a little scary and barbaric the way it's done, but it works really well. So let's get to it and I'll show you how we do this. So for starters, there are 8 screws along the bottom of the Colecovision, and you're going to need that number 2 Phillips to remove them. There's one each located basically in the centers along the front, back, and both sides. And then there's also a screw located in each of the opposite corners on the bottom of the unit as well. Alright, I now have the screws removed. You may have noticed that I took out about half of them or so and then went ahead and tipped the console over and then removed the rest of them. That's because if you try to remove all 8 and then flip it over, you might lose 1 or 2 screws in the process as they roll around and get away from you. So obviously that's just, it's optional. Don't have to do it the way I did it, but I tend to just remove a few at a time on something this large and when they're spaced out as they are so that I can keep better track of them. Alright, now that that's done, let's get the console shells taken apart. Now the easiest way to do this, and again this will look a little strange or a little crazy and barbaric in the process, but just have to bear with, start by first separating the backs, the shell along the back side of the Colecovision. Once you've done that, then along the front edge here, you need to grip along the front of the casing, remember I said how it overlaps, and pull it forward while also pushing down on the case shell. Then start walking your way down, doing the same thing, and eventually you'll get there, and the whole thing is likely going to crack loose on you, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get it all apart. There we go. Like I said, it looks a little scary, but it will come separated. Sometimes you might find that you have to push down on the reset button to get the cover off. In this case, I was trying to get it past a certain point to do that, but then it just came loose on me in general, so we're good to go. All right. From there, we just have the reset and the power button tops. Put those off to the side somewhere secure. And then we can focus on the rest of the main guts and the removal. There's just a couple more screws here that we have to worry about. Actually, a total of 4. 3 of them can be seen easily. The other one cannot yet, but I'll show you where they are. The first one is right here in the front on the top RF shield. It holds down the top RF shield to the main board. So we get that out. By the way, all the screws on the Colecovision are the exact same type as the ones that were removed on the case. So they're pretty much interchangeable, so you don't have to worry about getting them confused or mixed up. It's still advisable to keep them separated, but Just be aware that, at least in the case of the Colecovision, all of the Phillips screws inside are universal. The other one is here in the back. There's a small indentation or a hole opening to access it. This one, because it's actually holding the main PCB itself down and not part of the RF shield, this is where it comes in handy to have magnetic tools. Mine are just lightly magnetized so that it makes it easier to get screws out. And then there's one back here in the back by the RF section, and it's actually indented a little bit in the RF shield. So this one can be accessed pretty easily externally. Just kind of get in there and grab it with your fingers, and there we go. Now at this point, the RF shield is almost ready to be removed. On most Colecovisions, I've already done it on this one. I'll admit I've cheated a little bit, I apologize. But on most Colecovisions, there is a large copper braid that runs on the inside that is attached to the very front, in between the top of this RF shield and the main board, and attached to the side of the RF modulator box itself internally. It's a large ground strap to just provide additional solid grounding for all of these components. As such, there is usually going to be, and again, I've already removed it on this one, or I've already loosened it, so I apologize for that, but let me zoom in here a little bit. Hopefully you can see this, but right here is a section of solder that's on the main board. Originally, this solder will actually be soldered onto the main board and also be soldered onto the RF shield as well. And again, there's usually a large copper braid that actually sits in between that. So you're going to need a soldering iron that you can adjust the heat on, and you're going to have to set it up pretty high. I usually find that I have to set it at around 425, around 415 to 425 Celsius, or close to 800 degrees Fahrenheit to build up enough heat to get that loose. Also though, you have to take care when you're using your soldering iron to loosen up that solder that you don't melt the plastic that's in front of it. So just got to be careful when you're working on it. But once you've got that loosened up, and in fact the easiest way to do it is while you have your iron in place and you're using it to loosen up that solder, start applying upward pressure or upward force so that you can easily and quickly remove the RF shield once that solder gives way. And at that point, you'll be left with being able to see the main board of the Colecovision itself and ready for further disassembly. There's only one screw left at this time, and it is directly behind the center of the cartridge port. It's almost in the center of the board. It's a little low left of center, or a little low of center, but it is centered directly behind where the cartridge port is. Just one more Phillips screw. And again, it's exactly the same as the others. So there's no difference with it. At that point, you can then lift up on the board. Usually I grab from the RF modulator a little bit, and then you'll lift it up in the back and then pull it towards you or away from you so that you can get the front of the expansion connector fingers to pass through the bottom RF shield. And then we have the main board right here. And then to remove it completely, you can just remove the power plug socket from the back of the plastic casing. And it just sits in here between some pieces of plastic posts. That's it. Now the main board can be worked on, and the rest of the system put off to the side. And that's how you disassemble a Colecovision.